She didn't react when he taunted her, didn't stiffen when his sexist insults cut through the hallowed silence. She didn't even twitch when the 18-year-old trust fund kid, Leo Vance, raised his expensive sneaker to kick her. To the live-streaming crowd, it was a spoiled brat pushing a female soldier's limits for clicks. But they didn't see the woman behind the uniform. They didn't see Staff Sergeant Anya Petrova, a combat medic with 2 tours overseas. And that smooth marble floor was about to teach him a lesson in physics and humility. Before I show you exactly what happened next, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. It helps us know our community. Now, let's get into it. The afternoon sun beat down on Arlington National Cemetery, casting long, sharp shadows from the endless rows of gleaming white headstones that marked the silent hills. The air itself felt heavy with reverence, a profound quiet broken only by the distant, rhythmic chirping of cicadas and the soft, respectful shuffle of visitors' feet on the stone pathways. This was a place where history wasn't just read about, it was felt. Each marble stone was a testament to a life given in service, a story of sacrifice that resonated in the profound stillness. At the very heart of this sacred ground stood the tomb of the unknown soldier, a monolithic block of pristine white marble that seemed to absorb the sunlight, radiating a solemn, powerful energy. It was a monument not to war, but to the cost of peace, a promise kept in silent perpetuity. Here, guarding that promise, stood Staff Sergeant Anya Petrova. At 30 years old, she was a study in absolute discipline. Her dress uniform, a deep, immaculate blue, was pressed to razor-sharp perfection, each brass button polished to a mirror shine, catching the sun like tiny, distant stars. The old guard patch on her sleeve was stitched with military precision. A flawless military regulation bun held her dark hair tightly in place, not a single strand daring to escape. Her white-gloved hands held her rifle in a practiced, steady grip, and her gaze was fixed forward, clear and unwavering, looking at something far beyond the crowd of tourists before her. For Anya, this wasn't a performance or a punishment. It was the highest honor of her career. After 10 years in the Army, after tours where the air tasted of sand and fear, after patching up wounded brothers and sisters under fire, this was her purpose. She stood guard not for herself, but for those who could never stand again. The tomb behind her was a silent altar, and she was its devoted sentinel. The plaza before the tomb was filled with a diverse crowd, yet a shared sense of respect united them. Parents held their children's hands, whispering explanations about honor and sacrifice. A high school history class stood in a neat line, their teacher pointing out the significance of the guard's every step. An elderly couple stood arm in arm, their faces etched with memory and quiet sorrow. Then, the sacred silence was shattered. The grating scrape of expensive sneakers on stone, loud and careless, drew every eye. A voice, sharp with the unearned confidence of youth, sliced through the reverent hush. So this is it? This is the big show everyone's so hyped about. Leo Vance had arrived. 18 years old and draped in the casual arrogance of new money, he looked utterly out of place. He wore a designer off-white hoodie despite the heat, perfectly tailored shorts, and pristine Balenciaga sneakers that had clearly never touched anything but polished floors and manicured lawns. In one hand, he held the latest smartphone, its camera broadcasting his every move live to a digital audience who fed on manufactured drama. He angled the phone, framing Anya in a shot. "All right, guys, check this out," he narrated, his voice a condescending drawl loud enough for the whole plaza to hear. "They've got a real-life G.I. Jane standing here, but she just stands there for hours, like a mannequin in a costume shop. What a total snooze fest." Beside him, his perpetually stressed tutor, Mr. Davies, flinched. "Leo, for heaven's sake, lower your voice," he pleaded in a tight, desperate whisper. "This is consecrated ground. Show some respect." Leo waved a dismissive hand, not even bothering to look at him. "Relax, Davies. It's not a big deal. We're taxpayers, right? My dad's taxes probably pay her salary. If anything, she works for me. A few nearby tourists turned away, their faces flushing with secondhand embarrassment. A mother pulled her young daughter closer, shielding her from the display of disrespect. But Leo was oblivious, feeding off the attention. He smirked into his camera, his reflection glinting in the screen. Look at her. The rifle, the shiny buttons, the serious face. I bet she hasn't blinked all morning. Must be so incredibly boring. Can you even imagine? Mister. Davies sighed, the sound a mixture of frustration and defeat, and pinched the bridge of his nose. Leo, I'm asking you, please stop recording. This isn't appropriate. But his words were lost in the air. Leo, emboldened by the rising number of viewers on his live stream, took a few swaggering steps toward the painted boundary line, a new, more malicious idea sparking in his eyes. Leo's live stream counter-ticked upward, a cascade of heart emojis and inflammatory comments fueling his ego. He turned the camera on himself for a moment, a conspiratorial glint in his eyes. Watch this, he whispered to his audience. I'm gonna make her crack. Then, raising his voice to ensure it carried across the plaza, he shouted, Hey, soldier girl, do you get paid extra for standing in the sun all day? Or is this just what happens when you can't get a real job? A shocked murmur rippled through the crowd. People who had been trying to ignore him now turned to glare openly. A man with his young son rested a hand on the boy's shoulder, shaking his head in silent disgust. A few visitors lowered their own phones, suddenly uncomfortable documenting what was curdling from a simple lack of decorum into outright harassment. Mr. Davies stepped forward again, his voice now laced with urgency. Leo, that is enough. You're making a spectacle of yourself. Step back now. Leo shot him a withering look, holding up a single finger to silence him as one might a bothersome child. Chill out, Davies. She can't do anything. Look at her. He gestured toward Anya, who remained as still as the marble she stood upon. That's the whole point of these guards. They're trained to be statues. I could literally do a TikTok dance right in front of her, and she wouldn't even flinch. From the edge of the crowd, a new voice emerged, calm, but carrying the unmistakable weight of authority. Son, you need to show some respect. Leo turned to see an older woman, her posture ramrod straight. She wore a simple dress, but a small, sharp pin on her lapel identified her, the eagle, globe, and anchor of the United States Marine Corps. Her gray hair was cut short, and her eyes, clear and sharp, were fixed on him. That uniform she's wearing, the veteran said, her voice even but firm, it stand for something. People bled and died for it. Leo raised his eyebrows in mock surprise, a smirk playing on his lips. He gave the woman a lazy, sarcastic salute. Thank you for your service, ma'am. Seriously, but I'm just having a bit of fun. No harm, no foul, right? It's the 21st century. We can lighten up a little. The veteran's jaw tightened. Fun? The medals on that soldier's chest aren't for show. Each one represents a sacrifice you can't even begin to comprehend. Leo shrugged, his tone dripping with dismissiveness. Yeah, well, people sacrifice things every day. Doesn't mean the whole world has to stop and be quiet about it. Audible gasps now spread through the onlookers. The mother who had pulled her daughter close now covered the child's ears. The atmosphere, already tense, grew thick with a collective sense of outrage. Feeling the eyes of the crowd on him, and spurred on by the daredevil comments flooding his live stream, Leo took a decisive step forward. One of his white Balenciaga sneakers crossed the painted boundary line, landing with a soft, defiant scuff on the restricted marble. The crowd held its breath. Mr. Davies lunged, grabbing Leo's arm. Leo, he hissed, his face pale with panic. That is a restricted area. Get back behind the line this instant. Leo violently shook him off, his face contorting with irritation. Get off me. It's a stupid line on the ground, Davies. What's she going to do? Shoot me with her eyes. As if on cue, Anya began her ceremonial march. Her boots struck the marble with a sharp, resonant clap, a sound of pure, unwavering discipline. 21 steps. She pivoted on her heel, the movement so precise it seemed almost mechanical, and began her return march. She moved as if Leo wasn't there, as if he were nothing more than a ghost in her path. He smirked at his camera. See? Nothing. She's not even allowed to acknowledge me unless I'm a threat. He had overheard someone whisper it earlier, and now he clung to the word like a shield. A threat? Huh? He mused to his viewers, a wicked grin spreading across his face. He stepped closer, now just feet from Anya, close enough to see the faint, almost invisible scars on her jawline. He leaned in, his voice a loud, taunting whisper. Must get old, playing dress-up. Bet you couldn't handle a real deployment, could you? This is probably the best they could offer a woman. At the edge of the plaza, a uniformed park ranger, speaking into his radio, began walking briskly in their direction. Sir, you need to return behind the line now, the ranger called out firmly. Leo glanced over his shoulder. Oh, here come the fun police, he sneered to his viewers. He winked. Guess I'd better make this finale count. Ignoring the approaching ranger's final warning, Leo took 2 more audacious steps, planting himself directly in Anya's path for her return march. The crowd collectively gasped. Several parents physically pulled their children back, as if shielding them from an impending explosion. Cameras that had been lowered were now raised again, a sea of lenses eager to capture the inevitable collision. Leo stood with his arms crossed, a defiant smirk on his face, his phone held high to capture the moment he would finally break the silent soldier. What are you gonna do now? He taunted softly, the words a direct challenge. Gonna walk right through me? Anya's expression remained a mask of disciplined neutrality. Her rhythmic march continued, unwavering, until she was exactly 3 feet from him. Then, with the same crisp precision as before, she stopped, pivoted, and began her march in the opposite direction, executing her turn as if it were nothing more than a column of empty air. For a split second, Leo's smirk wavered. He had been so sure she would have to stop to react, to do something. The comments on his live stream exploded, a frantic mix of goading and disbelief. He was losing control of the narrative. His jaw tightened. The audience wanted a climax, and he was determined to give them one. He turned and fell in a step behind Anya, mimicking her solemn march with exaggerated, clownish movements. He stomped his feet loudly on the marble, the sound of his soft-soled sneakers a pathetic, hollow parody of the authoritative clap of her military boots. Left, right, am I doing it right? He mocked. Someone in the crowd muttered, that idiot is going to get himself arrested. Leo heard it, glanced back at his phone camera with a wild grin, and whispered, that's the plan. He was on a push until something snapped. He surged forward again, positioning himself directly in front of Anya one last time. His phone was angled perfectly. The live stream hearts and comments were flying faster than he could read them. He leaned in close, pointing his camera at Anya's chest, focusing on the rows of medals and ribbons pinned above her pocket. Look at all this bling, he narrated loudly for his viewers. Did you win these in a video game? Or do they just come with a costume rental? From the crowd, the female Marine veteran's voice rang out, sharp as a rifle crack. Son, every single one of those ribbons was paid for in blood and sweat. Stand down. Leo barely glanced her way. Yeah, I get it, he shot back. But it wasn't my blood, was it? I'm just here for the content, Grandma. The insult hung in the air, sickening and final. Mr. Davies groaned, covering his face with his hands. Leo, stop this, for the love of God, stop. But Leo was lost in his own manufactured drama. This was it, the grand finale. He turned back to his live stream, his voice a dramatic whisper. Okay guys, for real this time. This is the moment we make the statue crack. He lifted 1 foot, balancing precariously, a manic grin plastered on his face. One little tap, he whispered his phone, and we wake up Sleeping Beauty. Leo, no, Mr. Davies cried, lunging for him, but it was too late. Leo swung his leg, aiming a light, taunting kick at Anya's shin. It was meant to be a provocation, not an assault, but he hadn't accounted for the polished marble, slick as ice under the afternoon sun. He hadn't accounted for his own poor balance, his weight thrown too far forward. His expensive sneaker, designed for fashion, not traction, slipped. Time seemed to warp and slow down. The phone flew from his grasp, tumbling end over end through the air before it clattered onto the marble with a sickening crack. Leo's body twisted in a clumsy, unnatural spiral. A sharp, tearing sound, followed by a high-pitched cry of pure agony, ripped through the plaza, silencing everything. Ark! He crumpled to the ground, his body folding in on itself. He instinctively clutched his ankle, his face contorting from a mask of arrogance to one of blinding pain. For a single, stunned heartbeat, the entire plaza was frozen in silence. Then, chaos erupted. Tourists gasped. Mr. Davies fell to his knees beside his student. "Leo, don't move." "Oh my God, don't move," he stammered, his hands hovering uselessly over the boy's rapidly swelling ankle. "My ankle," Leo sobbed, his voice cracking with pain and shock. "It's broken. It's broken." The park ranger was already on his radio. "We have an injury at the tomb. Need medics now." Through a dizzying haze of pain, Leo saw movement. A shadow fell over him. He looked up, his vision blurred with tears, and his breath caught in his throat. Staff Sergeant Anya Petrova had broken her stance. In a single, fluid motion that spoke of years of training, she had secured a rifle and was now kneeling beside him. Her expression was no longer one of ceremonial impassivity. It was one of calm, focused assessment. "Stay still," she commanded, her voice even and measured, cutting through his panic. "Don't try to move it. Let me see." Leo stared up at her, his mind reeling in confusion. "But, he stammered. "Why are you helping me?" Anya didn't look up from his injury. "Because you're hurt," she said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Right now, that's all that matters." Leo watched, speechless, as Anya's white-gloved fingers, surprisingly gentle, probed the area around his ankle with practiced efficiency. Her touch was firm, professional, and devoid of any anger or judgment. It was the touch of a medic, someone trained to mend, not to blame. "It's a bad sprain, possibly a fracture," she diagnosed, her voice low and steady, anchoring him in a sea of pain and shame. "You're not putting any weight on this until the medics clear you." For the first time that day, Leo felt truly small. Not because he had been humiliated, but because he was being shown a grace he knew he hadn't earned. The elderly Marine veteran stepped forward, her earlier anger replaced by a look of profound respect. "Now that," she said quietly to the hushed crowd, "is a soldier." Leo heard her, and a hot flush of shame crept up his neck that had nothing to do with the sun. Then he saw Anya do something that shattered the last of his arrogant assumptions. With a series of deft, efficient movements, she unbuckled the gleaming black leather ceremonial belt from her own uniform. It was an integral part of her immaculate attire, a symbol of her elite post. Without a moment's hesitation, she began expertly wrapping it around his ankle, her movements precise and sure, creating a rigid, effective splint. He stared, dumbfounded. That's your uniform," he managed to whisper, his throat dry. "Don't you need it? You need it more," Anya replied simply, tightening the belt to secure his joint. The simple, direct statement hit him with the force of a physical blow. He swallowed hard, a lump forming in his throat. He had come here to mock a symbol, and now that very symbol was being used to care for him. Around them, the crowd watched in silent awe. Phones were lowered. The desire to capture drama had been replaced by a powerful, unspoken reverence for the scene unfolding. This was no longer about a spoiled kid getting his comeuppance. It was a lesson in character, discipline, and compassion, taught without a single raised voice. The medics were on their way, but in the interim, Anya remained knelt by his side, a silent guardian once more, but this time, she was guarding him. Mr. Collins sat beside him, propping him up, his hand on Leo's shoulder, a silent apology in his touch. "I need you to listen to me," Anya said quietly, her voice pitched so only he and Mr. Davies could hear. Leo forced himself to meet her gaze, his own eyes swimming with tears of pain and regret. I didn't mean to," he started, his voice cracking. Anya cut him off, not with harshness, but with quiet gravity. "This uniform," she said, tapping a finger on the old gar patch on her sleeve, is not a costume. It represents every man and woman who gave everything so that you could have the freedom to stand here and mock it. She glanced over her shoulder at the silent, sun-drenched tomb. That is why I stand here. That tomb holds Americans who fought and died and were never identified. We don't even know their names. I stand here because someone has to remember them. Someone has to honor them. Leo lowered his head, the weight of her words crushing him. I didn't know, he whispered hoarsely. Anya studied him for a long moment. Most people don't, she conceded, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. But knowing is where respect begins. When the medics finally arrived with a stretcher, they worked quickly. Thanks for stabilizing him, Sergeant, one of them said with a nod of professional respect. Anya simply nodded back. As they lifted Leo onto the stretcher, he winced, but his eyes were fixed on her. I'm sorry, he whispered, the words clumsy and inadequate, but utterly sincere. Anya adjusted the belt on his ankle one last time. Don't apologize to me, she said, her voice quiet but firm. If you really mean that, then honor them. Leo frowned, confused. Ow! By living a life that understands the price they paid, she said, nodding toward the tomb. By showing respect. Not just here, everywhere. They began to wheel him away. Thank you, he called back, his voice rough. Anya gave a single, almost imperceptible nod, then straightened up, her duty to him fulfilled. She turned, stepped back to her post, and resumed her watch, a sentinel once more, her uniform now missing its ceremonial belt. A week later, Leo Vance walked back up the path to the tomb, his ankle in a sleek black brace. There was no phone, no live stream. He held a single white rose. He saw her on duty, her march as precise as ever, a new ceremonial belt gleaming at her waist. He waited until she passed, then stepped to the boundary line and gently placed the rose on the ground. Staff Sergeant Petrova, he said softly. Her gaze remained locked forward, but he saw the faintest acknowledgement. I came back to say thank you, he said, his voice steady. Not just for helping, but for what you do, for what this all means. Her voice came back, quiet and clear, carried on the breeze. The thanks belongs to them. I know, Leo whispered, looking at the tomb, finally understanding. For the first time in his life, he understood the profound weight of silence. What happened in that plaza was more than just a spoiled teenager getting what he deserved. It was a powerful reminder that true strength isn't found in loudness, provocation, or online validation. It lies in discipline, in unwavering duty, and in the quiet compassion that can silence even the most arrogant voice. In a world obsessed with going viral, Staff Sergeant Petrova showed us that the most impactful actions are often the ones performed when no one is supposed to be watching. Have you ever witnessed someone showing profound disrespect in a place that demanded reverence? What would you have done if you were in that crowd, watching Leo's live stream unfold in real time? And do you think that true character is revealed not by how we challenge others, but by how we choose to help them, even when they have wronged us? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story about honor, duty, and unexpected humility resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about the quiet heroes who walk among us. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that respect is earned, not demanded, and that some things are still sacred. We read every single comment and value your perspective. More stories about incredible moments of character and courage are waiting for you right on your screen. Click on one of those next, and we'll see you tomorrow with an unbelievable story about a firefighter who had to make an impossible choice in a burning building.